This is the Pastor Podcast with Randy and Andy. Andy Payton is the lead pastor at Methodist Temple United Methodist Church in Evansville, Indiana. Randy Moore is associate pastor at Methodist Temple. Their goal is to see Christ in everything and everyone.
Welcome into the podcast, friends. It is good to have you with us as always. And as always, I'm joined by Pastor Andy Payton, and I'm Pastor Randy Moore.
It's good to be here, Randy. And it's going to be fun today because we get to try out our video. It's not going to be live yet, but we're experimenting with it. So
we are. So we've been audio since we started doing this podcast. We are adding for the 100th episode. I just said this is 98. So in 2 episodes, we will be going live. And
I can't believe we've almost 100.
I know.
That's crazy. Oh, my goodness.
It really is. Yeah. And it's already feeling kind of weird knowing that, the cameras are on us and they're on, even though we're not going to publish that this time because this is kind of a practice.
It's going to be a nice kind of like rehearsal for us.
It is.
To get used to it so that when we go live, we'll be ready to roll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot's going on at Methodist Temple. Not only is our podcast going to be adding video, we just last Sunday had our back to school Sunday and blessed the kids' backpacks, and we had so many children, and it was a combined service.
55 kids in Children's Church.
55,
It took 9 volunteers to manage that situation.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And that's in the middle of summer.
Yeah. It was
the end of summer.
Easter in August now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had the 75th anniversary in June, which was a huge Sunday. Bishop John Hopkins was here, but then we turned right around in August and had our back to school blessing of the backpack service, and boy, people turned out for it. So,
yeah. Well, we talk about what it is that nourishes our souls, and that's nourishing of the soul to see that many kids, and you could tell they were really into it.
It was inspiring.
Yeah.
That many, we had so many people show up, cared about praying for their kiddos as they went off to school, and of course, it feels great as a pastor to have a full sanctuary too. So, yeah.
It was really good. Okay, so what we do here with our podcast, if you're new, we kind of take a look back at last Sunday. We've already been talking about it, but what we really want to do is we want to take that text that was the basis for the sermon and the sermon itself and reflect on it, dig a little deeper into it. In the Revised Common Lectionary, we are in the year of Luke, and so our passages will not always come from Luke, but this one did this past Sunday, came from Luke 12, and it's the fairly familiar parable of the rich fool. I'm going to read it, and we'll go ahead and get started. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.'" And we might say, as an introduction to the rest of August, being rich toward God will be the theme.
Theme for I mean, the passages that come later on in the month that the lectionary assigns to us they all fit into that same theme, in my opinion. And so we're going to explore different ways that, we can be rich toward God, but then also we'll talk about some of the hurdles that we face when it comes to leaning into that as well. But this one, I mean, the line that sticks out to me right away is Jesus warns against all sorts of greed.
Right.
And that's the language. It's not just greed, singular, it's kind of a plural. And I think that's an important thing to point out because, it's not just about money, right? I mean, clearly that's the parable, though.
Right.
I mean, it's about a rich guy that saves up stuff for himself. Okay.
Yeah.
But then Jesus does preface it, though, with this idea that there's multiple ways that we can be greedy. And I talked about that a little bit in the sermon on Sunday, too. I mean, there's power. I mean, that's a big one, right? I mean, you can see that playing out in the government. You can see that playing out sometimes in family systems. You can see that playing out in the life of the church. And anytime there's a greed for power and people are power hungry, that kind of thing, it just destroys the community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you just honest, I mean, that's what happens. But then there's also like, I think another one would be like greed for status, right?
Yeah.
That's another one that came to my mind. People want to be known, and they think, well, if I'm just known, that'll satisfy my soul. Or you just go on and on. There's greed for food, greed for sex.
Yeah.
And then the one that I found kind of interesting was the spiritual one. There could be spiritual greed too, which is about saying, hey, I want all the benefits of a relationship with God. I want all the benefits of everything that God has to give me. Give me the good stuff. But I'm really, truth be told, not interested in doing God's will for my life.
That whole discipleship thing,
Yeah, that's just inconvenient. Yeah. And so I think sometimes that can happen within the life of the church. I'm not saying that always happens, but it can for sure. That's sort of spiritual greed.
Yeah, well, you tied the text and the sermon into the day, the theme of the day, which for last Sunday, as we've already said, is Back to School Sunday
Right.
and Blessing of the Backpacks Sunday. And you talked about legacy. And so what is it that we are going to leave to these children?
Right.
Is it an inheritance? And what kind of an inheritance?
Yeah, and that's the challenge with greed. I think greed, it will steal our capacity to leave a legacy to others. And the question then becomes, what is a legacy? And the best way I've heard it defined is like a legacy, our legacy is not what we leave behind as much as that it's what we leave within the people that knew us. Mm-hmm. And that's a very helpful distinction for me. In my Sunday school class, someone said, legacy building is about building your eulogy, not necessarily your resume. You know, I think you can kind of get the point that it's how, I guess, we impacted people in a positive or negative way. It's how a legacy is how we made folks feel that knew us, those kinds of things.
You talked about one of your teachers who had this kind of an impact on you, and I love that because I have a few. You know, everybody has one or two
Your favorite
or three.
teacher? Yeah.
But not many more than that, right? All the teachers
No,
are...
there's a few that come to your, like the Hall of Fame.
Right.
You know, they come to your mind. Yeah. And so mine was my art teacher, Mr. Graves, and he was just a cool guy. I actually sent this sermon to him afterwards, and he was just so touched by it. He messaged me back, Mr. Graves did, because we're friends on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
But I took 4 years of art because of Mr. Graves, but the thing I loved about him was that he was attentive to us. He would talk about the music we liked. He would argue with us about football and sports and these kinds of things. I mean, he was a Packers fan. I was a Bears fan. So we, technically shouldn't probably be friends, but that kind of thing.
Right. So he left something within you.
Absolutely.
That went beyond art.
Oh, definitely. I can't tell you, I don't remember a lesson that we had. I remember some of the projects we did, I guess, but the thing I remember about Mr. Graves is just like how he made me feel, right? Like he created this culture of safety and a sense of belonging. And so every time I had an elective I can use during high school, I was going to be like, Mr. Graves, that's where I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you talked about this inheritance, and you also, you talked about sin too as an opposite of what we're really after here.
Right. And not to be a downer, but it's hard not to talk about greed and then not connect it with the reality of sin.
Sure.
I kind of debated whether or not to even bring that theological topic up because, it's Blessing in the Backpacks. It's supposed to be this big celebration, but I think sin is just an important subject to cover. Mm-hmm. You've heard it said, I've heard it said that the gospel in one word is love. Mm-hmm. I would say like the gospel in 3 words is redemption from sin. Mm-hmm. And the two, gospel in one word is love, gospel in 3 words is redemption of sin. Those go together because what sin does, if you really understand it in a proper way, it sets the stage for us to be able to understand what does Christian love actually look like. If you really don't understand our concept of sin, then chances are you're going to pick up on a more of a culturally conditioned understanding of love. And so you really need to kind of get this clear, in my opinion. John Wesley, for example, when he would talk about his 3 biggest doctrines, the first was original sin. The second was justification by faith alone. and the third was holiness of heart and life. These were the three big theological topics that Wesley would say everything else comes back to these three things. And now I'll just have to confess, the doctrine of original sin is a hard one, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard one to take in. And so, I mean, classically speaking, though, story goes, Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and now from henceforth, all of humanity has this propensity towards sinning now, and that's the classical way of understanding sin. The challenge I've noticed, Randy, and maybe you've noticed this over the years too, is we live in a modern world, and many people have more of a scientific or even evolutionary type of understanding of how we got here. And when you start talking about these two people that every human being comes forth from, that's a challenge, right?
Right.
And so how do we reconcile that becomes the big question. And evolutionarily speaking, I think there is a way to talk about sin. And I alluded to it in my sermon a little bit. But what evolution says is that we didn't start as perfect, like two human beings a long time ago. Rather, we started simple, and we evolved over time as a species. And adding into that, as we evolved, we began to cultivate, as a species, a sense of self-preservation, a sense of tribalism, even aggression. And that evolution has kept us alive for millions of years. Now, here's the catch. That can become harnessed in a destructive way, too. And I think we're getting into the understanding of sin now. It's something that's very real to us. We have this propensity towards meism. We have this propensity towards self-preservation. We inherited that from generations of people that come from long ago. And what Christ does is he enters into this world where we're in this process of becoming, and invites us to move now not towards this self-preservation, self-interest mode. To Jesus invites us to move into more of an outgoing mode. In our lesson today, he calls it become rich toward God. That's the understanding. And so I know that's probably more than what we should probably talk about in the podcast, but I like to geek out on this stuff.
That's all good.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to go over across the street to the University of Evansville pretty soon. And kids nowadays, they're taught evolution in a lot of schools. And so how do you reconcile these Christian doctrines with what people are being told, that's science? And you better be ready in our culture today. So
yeah. Well, as we come back to the parable of the rich fool, and we think about what was it? What was this rich man's sin? And I guess Jesus even sets it up by telling us what it is even before he tells the parable. He says, take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. So his sin is greed. A lot of times Jesus doesn't say like that directly. He doesn't make his point directly like that. A lot of times someone asks a question, then he just simply tells a parable, and you got to figure it out.
Right.
So this is rather helpful.
No, he says, here's my point. Let me illustrate it for you now. Yeah.
So, and his greed left this man rich, but totally alone.
Yeah.
Totally alone.
Right. Which is, think about it. He's totally turned inward, right? And that's not the point. The point is to go outward, to move beyond that self-preservation mode and to think about others. And he had a legacy. The legacy was he had barns full of stuff, right?
Right.
He had a legacy. There it is.
Sure.
But he had no love, no sense of impact on the people around him.
No wife, no children, no
Zero.
other people.
Yeah.
And no God. He left God out. But here's something I found interesting. I don't really know what to make of it. But in this parable, in verse 20, after he says he's just going to relax, eat, drink, and be merry, but God said to him, I looked, and I think this is the only parable where God speaks. Now, God is represented.
Right.
Christ is represented in some of these parables, but the God who he has totally ignored said to him, you fool.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty harsh language. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, and then there is language about soul in there too. We always talk about how is it with your soul. And it says, and that's verse 19, the one before there. It says, I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But then God says, "You fool."
Yeah.
And so what are we learning here? Like, well, having wealth and stuff like that does not necessarily end in spiritual vitality.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of empty yourself out, spiritually speaking, as you collect more and more. One of the best ways I've heard it explained when it comes to Jesus, he has a lot to say about wealth.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
More than prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe more than just about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness, I mean, that's probably up there. But wealth is a big topic for Jesus. And one of the reasons I think Jesus does that is that it's hard to maintain a sense of God awareness in our lives if our lives are filled with all sorts of stuff. And I mean, a case study of that could well be our Western culture right now, our consumeristic culture. The more stuff we have, maybe it could be, you know, maybe we could reason or argue, the less aware of God we've become as a society.
I was a little convicted. We just moved, and we moved a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
we moved a lot of.
It's amazing how much we can accumulate. Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, did we really need that?
Right.
2 of them, 3 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know what it's like for you, but I mean, for me, I'll hold on to stuff because it has like a sentimental value to it. It reminds me of something. Yeah. Like, I mean, I found this rock, since we're on video.
Our first visual aid.
And this was on my dad's desk when I was a boy.
Yeah.
And you can't, I mean, I don't know if folks can read it or not on the video, but it says first stone. And then the text it references is John 8:7. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically a reference to the story where Jesus says, "You without sin cast the first stone." Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, my dad had that on his desk at the church.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I kept it whenever he passed away, and they were asking about things you wanted to keep. And so, I mean, I'm definitely going to hold on to that one. But anyway, you get sentimental with things too.
Yeah. So your definition of greed was hoarding, for ourselves, and the opposite of that is generosity.
Yeah. And so I kind of, I don't know, I went through this kind of distinction thing where I talked about, okay, this is greed. This is centered in God. Greed obviously is I'm building up things for myself. God is generosity. And now I'll say the reason why we are generous is because we believe God is generous too. Mm-hmm. So generosity is what it looks like to live our lives in relationship with God, just because that's who God is. Mm-hmm. That's the way all the real commandments work. They're always reflections of something that God already is. So, but I went in and I named a couple others. Like when we're motivated by greed, we ignore the poor. Mm-hmm. And the Bible again and again, it says this, like the evaluation of a society, biblically speaking, is how are the poor, the orphans, and the widows cared for? And so when we become motivated by greed, obviously we forget the poor. The flip side of that is, when we're centered in God, we're going to care for others. Again, just like generosity. Why do I care for others? I care for others because God cares for others too. Having a person's motivated by greed is about having more. A person's motivated by God is about becoming more. Another one could be a person who is centered in greed finds their identity in their stuff. I am what I have. Someone that's centered in God finds, as Christians, we would say, finds our identity in Christ. Mm-hmm. Christ defines who God is for us, but also who we are spiritually to become. And the idea here is the more and more of ourselves we give to Christ, the happier and happier we become, because that's who we're created to be.
Anyone who has flown, has walked through an airport terminal, has seen the duty-free stores, and you told a story that I never. You never knew. I
learned that in the sermon too. Yeah. Chuck Finney, Feeney was the guy's name. He was a I think he started that company with another guy.
Okay.
And in the early 1980s, I guess he decided his goal was to give all the money away, and throughout his life, they estimated he made about $8 billion, not million, $1 billion. And in 2023, when he died, he had given most of it away. Mm-hmm. And throughout his life, he lived in a modest apartment, did not own a car. He flew coach. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of the stuff he gave away, though, was done anonymously, so they didn't even know where it came from. He gave to education. He gave to the arts, other, service type non-for-profits, these kinds of things. And when he died, though, it became known, obviously. You don't give $8 billion away and people don't notice. And he was an inspiration to people like Warren Buffett or what's the Microsoft guy? Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Inspired him. Yeah.
That's a good story. Yeah. So he left a definite legacy.
Definitely huge. And I mean, it's the opposite of this parable, right? Like he
Yeah.
did the complete opposite. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and think about the positive impact he had. Sure.
The idea being that we leave something that lives beyond us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you left the congregation and the listeners with 3 questions. And the first one is, when you consider those things in your lives, ask yourself, why do you want that thing?
Right.
Yeah.
And then what's my method of acquiring it? Can I live with myself in terms of the method I use?
Uh-huh.
And my favorite one, though, is what am I going to do when I actually get it? What if I do get it? What am I going to do with it?
Uh-huh.
I think that probably reveals our true motivation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, as we move ahead to the rest of the month, though, we're going to continue to talk about, as we mentioned, being rich toward God. And this coming weekend is another parable from Jesus. And looking forward to him talking about service, the servant that returns. And we're called to be awake and ready for when the servant returns. And so service is a big part of what it means to be rich toward God as well.
Very good. We will look forward to that. And we will look forward to seeing you again. And in a couple of weeks, we will actually see you. Rather, you'll see us, but, we can see you through that lens. We appreciate you being someone who listens to our podcast and someone who's going to soon watch our podcast. We hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you again next week.
This has been the Pastor Podcast with Randy and Andy. You are welcome to join us at Methodist Temple in person or online. Methodist Temple is at 2109 Lincoln Avenue in Evansville, Indiana. Our traditional Sunday morning worship service is at 8:30 with our contemporary service at 11. Log on to our website at methodisttemple.church. We see Christ in you.